The medical file trembled once in Alara Vane's hand before she forced her fingers still. 8 weeks pregnant. The healer's neat handwriting should have made the corridor feel brighter. Instead, the words spoken beyond the half-closed council doors turned the page into a death sentence. Once the heir is secured, Alara will no longer be necessary. Alpha King Kael Draven's voice carried through the narrow opening, deep and controlled. It was the voice that commanded 9 packs, sentenced traitors, and once whispered her name against her skin as though it were sacred. Alara stopped breathing. Her free hand moved instinctively over her abdomen. There was no visible curve yet, only a secret heartbeat the healer had detected that morning. She had imagined telling Kael beside the fire in their chambers. She had imagined his scarred hand covering hers. Inside the chamber, High Elder Malrek gave a satisfied hum. Lady Seraphine's coronation must follow the birth immediately. General Vale will not hold the Eastern armies forever without assurance. And Alara? General Cassian asked. She will be transferred to Moon Abbey, Malrek replied, quietly. Alara waited for Kael to object. Silence. Then came the scrape of a chair. The kingdom cannot survive a civil war, Kael said. Prepare the agreement. Something inside Alara went cold. 2 council guards stood at opposite ends of the corridor. Confronting Kael now would reveal what she had heard and what she carried. She lowered her gaze, turned with deliberate calm, and walked away before either guard noticed the medical file beneath her cloak. She did not cry. Tears were a luxury for women who were safe. Their private chambers smelled of cedarwood and rain, Kael's scent woven into every curtain and blanket. Alara locked the door, crossed to his study, and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. The royal seal lay beside a folded parchment. Her pulse struck hard against her throat. Heir custodianship decree. She read the first clauses standing. By the 4th, her knees threatened to give way. The child of the reigning Alpha King would be surrendered to the royal council within 1 hour of birth. The mother would relinquish all authority over the heir. Alara Vane would be removed from royal residence and placed under permanent protection at Moon Abbey. Lady Seraphine Vale would assume the Luna title. At the bottom stood Kael's unmistakable signature. Not forged, not copied. His. Alara pressed her palm to the desk until the edge bit into her skin. She remembered every winter she had kept Nightfang fed, every treaty she had rewritten, every soldier whose family she had personally compensated. Kael had praised her mind in private, while allowing the council to reduce her to a womb on parchment. A pawn did not argue with the hand moving her. A pawn left the board. Alara removed the Luna ring. The moonstone resisted for 1 painful second, warming against her skin as if the pack itself begged her to reconsider. She twisted harder. The ring slid free, leaving a pale mark around her finger. She placed it on Kael's desk. Beside it, she wrote 1 sentence. You may keep the throne. You will not take my child. She copied the decree, folded the medical file beneath her tunic, and took the moonstone pendant that had belonged to her mother. Into a leather satchel went plain clothing, human currency, dried herbs, and a map of the forgotten tunnels beneath the royal archive. Nothing bearing Kael's crest, nothing that could make her hesitate. Thunder rolled over Blackstone Citadel as Alara slipped behind the tapestry in the eastern gallery. The hidden door opened after she pressed the 3rd stone from the floor. Cold air rose from the darkness. Behind her waited the man she loved, the title she had earned, and a kingdom that had already decided her fate. Ahead waited bond sickness, exile, and wolves who would hunt her unborn child. Alara stepped into the tunnel and pulled the stone door closed. Hours later, Kael entered their chambers calling her name. No answer came. He saw the medical appointment card first, then the ring. As he reached for it, the moonstone split with a sharp crack. Pain tore through his chest. The mate bond, constant since the night he claimed Alara beneath the full moon, vanished into absolute silence. Kael stared at her note as terror replaced the blood in his veins. Far beyond the citadel walls, Alara crossed the western boundary with 1 hand over her unborn heir and never looked back. The first wave of bond sickness struck Alara before sunrise. She had been walking for nearly 5 hours through the western forest, following an abandoned patrol trail that curved away from the main road. Rain clung to the branches above her, dripping steadily onto her hood and shoulders. Every breath burned. Then the invisible tether between her and Kael tightened. Pain hooked beneath her ribs and pulled so violently that Alara stumbled against a pine tree. The medical file beneath her tunic pressed into her stomach as she doubled over. For 1 terrible second, she felt him. Not his thoughts. Not his voice. Only his panic. It crashed through the damaged mate bond like a distant roar, followed by a pulse of command so strong that her inner wolf turned instinctively toward Nightfang. Come back. The bond carried no words, but the demand was unmistakable. Alara gripped the bark until it cut her palm. No. Her voice was weak, but the choice was not. She pulled the moonstone pendant from beneath her shirt. The silver chain had belonged to her mother, though Alara had never known why the stone remained warm against her skin. Now, under the gray light of dawn, it glowed faintly. Mara Fenn's name was written on the back of an old map Alara had found among her mother's belongings years ago. Greyhaven, Western Neutral Territory. If her mother had trusted the woman, Alara had no better option. She pressed the pendant against the pale mark where the Luna ring had rested. The mate bond shuddered. Cold spread over her chest, numbing the pull until Kale's presence faded into a distant ache. It did not sever the bond. It hid it, wrapping her scent beneath layers of old moon magic. Alara forced herself upright. Nightfang trackers would search the roads first, then the rivers. She stepped directly into a freezing stream. The water rose above her boots as she followed it north for nearly 2 miles, walking against the current to confuse any wolf tracking her scent. When she finally climbed onto the opposite bank, her feet were numb and blood had begun to drip from her nose. She wiped it away with her sleeve. There was no time to be afraid. By evening, the forest gave way to a narrow human road lined with rusted signs and broken fencing. Greyhaven appeared beyond the hills as a cluster of dim lights beneath a low ceiling of clouds. Alara entered the town under darkness. The clinic stood between a closed bakery and a mechanic's garage. A faded sign above the door read, Fenn Family Medicine. The lights were still on. Alara knocked once. No answer. She knocked again. Harder. Locks shifted behind the door. A woman in her 50s appeared, holding a short-barreled shotgun in one hand. Gray streaked her dark hair, and her eyes moved immediately from Alara's wet clothes to the blood beneath her nose. We're closed. My mother told me to find Mara Fenn. The woman's expression did not change. What was your mother's name? Alara hesitated. Lysandra Vane. The shotgun lowered. Mara pulled her inside without another word. The clinic smelled of antiseptic, dried herbs, and coffee left too long on a burner. Mara locked the door, closed the blinds, and pointed toward an examination table. Sit. I need shelter, not treatment. You need both. Mara cut through the wet fabric at Alara's sleeve, examined her pupils, then placed 2 fingers against the pulse in her throat. Her gaze sharpened. How far along? 8 weeks. And the father? Alara held her stare. Not relievant. Mara gave a humorless laugh. With that bond damage in your chest, he is very relevant. She drew blood, mixed it with a clear solution, and watched silver-gray particles settle at the bottom of the vial. Alara's stomach turned cold. What is that? Silver dust. Mara placed the vial beneath a lamp. Small doses, repeated exposure. Not enough to kill you quickly, but enough to weaken a pregnancy. Alara remembered the supplements delivered to her chambers every morning. Royal healer's orders. Council approved. How long? Several weeks, at least. The room seemed to narrow around her. The betrayal had not begun outside the council chamber. Someone had been preparing to kill her child before Kale even knew it existed. Mara studied the moonstone pendant around Alara's neck. You didn't come here only because of Lysandra. Alara removed the copied decree and placed it on the table. Mara read it once. Then again. Her face hardened. I can hide you for 1 night. I need longer. I don't know you. You knew my mother. I knew what hunted her. Before Alara could answer, an engine stopped outside. Headlights swept across the closed blinds. Mara killed the lamp. 3 firm knocks struck the clinic door. A man's voice called from outside. Royal notice. We are searching for a dangerous fugitive named Alara Vane. Alara's hand moved protectively over her abdomen. Mara pushed her toward a narrow door behind the medicine shelves. Basement. Now, Alara descended the steps as the front door opened above her. Through the floorboards, she heard the officer unfold a document. By order of the Royal Council, Alara Vane is charged with theft of sealed documents, conspiracy with Ashen Ridge, and unlawful removal of royal property. Royal property. They did not mean the decree. They meant her child. Alara pressed the medical file against her chest while Mara answered each question with calm irritation. Then another voice joined them. Deep, male, controlled. I will read the notice. Silence followed. A moment later, slow footsteps crossed the clinic floor. They stopped directly above the basement door. Alara reached for the small blade inside her boot. The door opened. A tall man descended, wearing a dark coat and carrying a silver dagger in his left hand. A burn scar covered his palm. His amber eyes moved from Alara's face to the moonstone pendant. "Alara Vane," he said. She raised the blade. He did not flinch. "My name is Ronan Ashbourne." The Alpha of Ashen Ridge lowered his dagger. "And if you want your child to survive the Royal Council, you are coming with me." Alara kept the blade raised. Ronan Ashbourne stood 3 steps above her in the basement stairwell, blocking the only exit. His silver dagger rested loosely in his left hand, though the burn scars crossing his palm suggested he had once held something far more dangerous. "You expect me to follow you because you know my name?" Alara asked. "No." Ronan's amber eyes settled on the copied decree inside her coat. "I expect you to follow me because the men upstairs are not royal guards." A floorboard creaked above them. Alara heard Mara speaking, her voice deliberately loud. "There is no fugitive here. You've searched the clinic." The officer answered with a growl. "Then you won't object if we search the cellar." Ronan glanced toward the door. "They belong to General Cassian Vale," he said. "The Royal Council wants you alive. Cassian's men only need the child alive." A chill moved through Alara's body. "How do you know about the child?" "I smelled the silver poisoning before I reached the stairs." His response was too calm. Alara tightened her grip. "Then you also know I have no reason to trust another Alpha." Something cold flickered across Ronan's face, but he did not use his command. "That may be the first intelligent thing anyone from Nightfang has said about me." The basement door shook as someone tested the handle. Ronan turned and slid a metal bolt into place. "You have 30 seconds to decide. Stay here and let Cassian's soldiers cut through that door, or come to a territory where the Royal Council has no legal authority. And what do you want in return?" "The truth. You are not entitled to it." "No," Ronan agreed. "But if your disappearance brings Kael Draven's army to my border, I am entitled to know whether I am sheltering a victim, a spy, or the beginning of a war." The honesty unsettled her more than false kindness would have. Alara lowered her knife by an inch. "I have proof the council plans to take the Heir." Ronan's gaze sharpened. "Show me." She removed the copied decree but kept the medical file hidden beneath her tunic. Ronan read the document quickly. His expression remained controlled until he reached the clause naming Moon Abbey. His fingers tightened around the parchment. "You have seen this law before," Alara said. "I have seen what it does." A violent crash sounded above them. The clinic door had been forced open. Ronan folded the decree and returned it. "There is a tunnel behind the medicine shelves. Mara will delay them." Alara did not move. "How do I know this is not another trap?" "You don't." He stepped aside, revealing a narrow stone passage behind him. "You survive first. You judge me later." That answer was enough. They escaped beneath Greyhaven, as Cassian's soldiers tore apart Mara's clinic. By dawn, Ronan had taken Alara across the western mountains into Ashen Ridge territory. She had expected lawlessness, starving rogues, and broken camps. Instead, she found stone houses arranged around guarded wells, children carrying firewood in pairs, and traders unloading grain beneath written contracts posted publicly on wooden boards. Ashen Ridge was not chaotic. It was disciplined without being cruel. Ronan led her to a warehouse near the central settlement. Angry voices shook the timber walls. Inside, 36 wolves surrounded a nearly empty grain store. "You brought me here to watch a riot?" Alara asked. "I brought you here because you claim to be more than a frightened Luna with stolen papers." Ronan gestured toward the ledgers, spread across a table. 3 supply convoys arrived this month. According to my steward, half the grain vanished. Alara ignored the hostile stares and opened the first ledger. The columns were written in Nightfang military units. She checked the warehouse markings, then the trader receipts. "These totals are wrong." The steward bristled. "I have counted pack stores for 12 years. "You counted correctly," Alara said. "You converted incorrectly." She pointed to the numbers. Nightfang records grain by Royal Stone. Ashen Ridge trades by Mountain Stone. A Royal Stone is 20% lighter. Your ledger created a shortage that does not exist. Silence fell. Alara moved to the storage wall and examined the stacked barrels. "The missing grain is not missing. It was recorded twice under different weights." Ronan crossed his arms. "Prove it." She ordered the barrels reopened and divided into equal rows. Within an hour, the supposed deficit had nearly disappeared. But one problem remained. 3 families had already been denied rations because of the error. The wolves gathered around them did not look relieved. They looked betrayed. Elara understood immediately. Numbers could correct the ledger. They could not restore trust. "Open the reserve store," she told the steward. "That supply is for winter. Then record today's distribution as an advance against the corrected balance. Feed the families first. Explain the error publicly." Ronan studied her. "You would expose your own administration's mistake. It is already exposed. Hiding it would only teach them that authority fears the truth." The reserve doors opened. By sunset, the shouting had stopped. Ronan met Elara outside the warehouse with a document in his hand. "A blood oath of loyalty," he said. She read it once and handed it back. "No." His brow lifted. "I will not escape one king by surrendering myself to another. You are in my territory, and I helped prevent unrest in it." A trace of amusement touched his mouth. "What do you propose?" "A service contract. I advise on logistics, law, and medical supply. You provide shelter and protection. Either party may end the agreement with 7 days' notice. No command, no claim, no control over my child." Ronan was silent for several seconds. Then he tore the blood oath in half. "Agreed." That night, he took Elara beneath the old keep to a locked archive carved into the mountain. He opened a hidden drawer and removed a painted portrait of a silver-eyed woman wearing ceremonial robes. Around the woman's neck hung a moonstone pendant identical to Elara's. Elara's hand rose slowly to her own necklace. Ronan watched the color leave her face. "That woman," he said, "was Asteria, the first Luna." His gaze dropped to the pendant glowing against Elara's skin. "And I think the royal council has been lying about your bloodline since the day you were born." The first child collapsed before breakfast. Elara was still standing inside the mountain archive, staring at the portrait of First Luna Asteria, when the alarm bell rang 3 times above them. Not a border warning. A medical emergency. Ronan turned toward the stone stairs immediately. By the time they reached the central settlement, 2 more bells had joined the first. The clinic courtyard was crowded with frightened families. A young boy lay on a wooden table beneath a wool blanket, his small body shaking so violently that his teeth struck together. Another child vomited beside the doorway, while her mother held back her hair. Elara stopped 3 feet away. She smelled metal, not fresh blood. Silver. "He was well last night," the boy's father said. They all were. Ashen Ridge's healer, a narrow-faced man named Corvin, pushed through the crowd with a leather case. "Clear the courtyard," he ordered. "It may be fever plague." Panic moved through the gathered wolves. Several parents pulled their children closer. "Seal the eastern quarter," Corvin continued. "No one enters or leaves." Elara caught his wrist before he could administer the dark liquid inside his syringe. "What is that?" "What is that?" "Wolfsbane tincture. It will suppress the fever." "It will suppress his wolf," Elara said. "If this is silver poisoning, you will stop his body from fighting it." Corvin's eyes hardened. "You have been here one night, and I had silver dust in my blood yesterday." The courtyard fell silent. Ronan stepped beside her. "What do you see?" Elara knelt near the boy. She did not touch him immediately. She examined the gray color beneath his fingernails, the thin red lines across his gums, and the faint burns around his lips. Then she smelled his breath. "Mineral water," she said. His father blinked. "What? Where did he drink this morning?" "The eastern well." A woman near the door whispered that her daughter had drunk from the same source. 3 more parents gave the same answer. Elara rose. "This is not contagious. The well is contaminated." Corvin looked unconvinced. "Silver does not dissolve in water at that concentration. Not naturally." Ronan's expression changed. "Someone put it there." Within minutes, Elara had organized the courtyard. She ordered every child who had used the eastern well separated by symptoms, not by family. Mild cases received charcoal, salt water, and crushed moonroot. Severe cases were placed closest to the hearth, where their body temperatures could be controlled. She assigned parents tasks to keep them from panicking. No one stood uselessly. No one was told to wait without knowing why. Then Elara, Ronan, and Mara followed the water channel uphill. The eastern well drew from an old mountain reservoir above the settlement. As they climbed, Elara noticed a silver-gray residue clinging to the moss along the stone channel. Mara scraped some into a glass vial. "This is refined dust," she said. "The same type found in Elara's blood." Ronan's wolf flashed behind his amber eyes. They poisoned my territory to reach her? No, Ilara said, studying the current. This started before I arrived. She pointed toward the northern slope, where the water passed beneath a collapsed mining bridge. This is a field test. They found the source inside an abandoned silver mine. 3 rusted barrels had been opened above the reservoir. Each bore the faded crest of Vale Military Supply. General Cassian's family. Ronan drew his dagger. I will send riders east. And do what? Ilara asked. Attack the first convoy you see. His jaw tightened. They poisoned children. Yes, which means they expect rage, not evidence. She stepped around the barrels, examining the tracks. The wheels had narrow iron rims. Merchant wagons, not military transports. They want Ashen Ridge to strike a civilian route. Then Council will call you a rogue alpha and send an army with legal approval. Ronan looked at her for a long moment. What do you recommend? We keep 1 barrel sealed, photograph the crests, follow the wagon tracks later. And the water? Ilara surveyed the slope. The reservoir fed 2 main channels. Closing both would leave half the settlement without water. We do not close it, we divert it. Using old mining gates, charcoal sacks, crushed limestone, and layers of wool, Ilara designed a temporary filtration system. Ronan's workers questioned it until she made them test the water on silver-sensitive moss. The untreated sample blackened the plant. The filtered sample did not. By late afternoon, clean water flowed into the eastern quarter. No child died. When Ilara returned to the clinic, the boy from the courtyard was awake. His father caught her hand with both of his. You saved him. Ilara looked toward the rows of exhausted families. No, everyone here did. But Ronan had seen the truth. Ilara had walked into a frightened crowd with no title, no guard, and no authority except competence. Within hours, wolves who had distrusted her were following her instructions without question. She had not demanded loyalty. She had earned it. That evening, Ilara reviewed the mine's shipping ledger at Ronan's war table. Several pages had been torn away, but one surviving entry listed repeated deliveries from Nightfang medical stores. She traced the line with her finger. This connects the poisoning in my blood to the mine. Ronan stood across from her. It also proves someone inside Kale's court approved the shipments. Ilara's vision suddenly blurred. She gripped the edge of the table. The room tilted. Ilara? I'm fine. She was not. A violent cramp cut across her lower abdomen. Her knees folded before she could stop them. Ronan moved faster than she expected, catching her before she struck the floor. The instant his arm went around her, Ilara shoved against his chest. Do not touch my stomach. The fear in her voice stopped him. Mara rushed in, knelt beside them, and pressed 2 fingers to Ilara's wrist. How long has the pain lasted? It just started. You have pushed too hard. Ronan's gaze shifted between them. What are you not telling me? Ilara closed her eyes. Mara looked at her first, giving her the chance to speak. Another cramp stole her breath. She is pregnant, Mara said. Silence settled over the room. Ronan's expression did not soften with pity. It sharpened with calculation. How far? 8 weeks, Ilara answered. Kale's heir, my child. The correction came instantly. Ronan nodded once. Your child. He rose and turned toward the door. Double the guards around this building. Move her to the northern residence. No one enters without Mara's approval. Ilara forced herself upright. You do not get to turn me into a prisoner. Ronan faced her. I am not protecting an heir for political advantage. Then why? His scarred left hand closed slowly around the hilt of mercy. Because my sister was taken to Moon Abbey under the same law. The anger in his voice was quiet enough to be dangerous. They removed her daughter before she could hold her. My sister died 3 days later. Ilara's resistance faltered. Ronan placed the mine ledger on the table between them. The council will not repeat that history here. After he left, Ilara opened the ledger again. Near the bottom of the final page, beneath a list of silver doses and medical trial numbers, a name had been written in faded black ink. Ilara Vene. Beside it stood the designation. Maternal Vessel 7. She stared at the number. 7, which meant 6 women had come before her. The first riot began over flour. By sunrise, 200 wolves had gathered outside the Nightfang storehouse, demanding the winter rations Ilara had ordered months ago. The grain existed. No one knew where she had placed it. Kale stood beneath the iron awning as rain struck the courtyard in hard silver lines. His guards formed a barrier between him and the crowd, but the anger pressing against them was not rebellion. It was fear. My children have not eaten since yesterday, a woman shouted. The southern wagons never arrived, another wolf called. Cale turned toward Steward Halden. Where are the reserve stores? Halden's face had gone pale. The ledgers list 3 locations, Your Majesty, but Lady Alara changed the distribution route after the bridge collapse. She recorded everything. Yes, but she used a secondary cipher. Cal stared at him. You are telling me no one in this kingdom can read the Luna supply system? Halden lowered his eyes. No one but her. The answer struck harder than accusation. For 5 years, Cale had believed Alara merely refined his rule. She attended councils, corrected treaties, and ensured the court ran smoothly. He had never understood that she had been holding the kingdom together with both hands. By noon, the Eastern Pack sent word that its healers were out of fever root. The northern border reported missing wages. 2 alphas demanded arbitration over hunting land. Alara had resolved those disputes before they reached him. Now every crack she had quietly sealed was opening at once. Cale returned to Blackstone Citadel with rain dripping from his coat and fury tightening his chest. Not fury at Alara, at himself. The mate bond remained silent. He had searched every road west of the capital. His trackers found broken scent trails in streams, false footprints near the southern ridge, and a strip of bloodied cloth tied to a branch 20 miles in the wrong direction. She had anticipated them all. Of course she had. He had married the finest strategist in Nightfang and then expected her to flee like a frightened court lady. The great hall had been prepared for Seraphine's Luna ceremony. White banners hung from the pillars. Noble families filled the galleries. At the center of the dais, High Elder Malrek held the ancestral Luna ring in a black velvet box. The moonstone was still cracked. Cale stopped at the foot of the throne. This ceremony is premature. Malrek smiled thinly. The packs require stability. They require food. They require the appearance of order. Beside him, Seraphine stood in a silver gown, her injured finger wrapped in lace. Her eyes found Cale's with careful vulnerability. I did not request this, she said softly. It was a lie. He could smell the ambition beneath her perfume. General Cassian stepped forward. Every day without a Luna encourages unrest. My eastern forces remain loyal, but loyalty must be rewarded. There it was, the threat disguised as service. Cale looked across the hall. Hundreds watched him, waiting to see whether the Alpha King still controlled his own court. He climbed the dais. Malrek offered him the ring. The instant Cale touched it, pain flashed through his palm. The moonstone pulsed once, as though recognizing him, then turned cold. He remembered Alara wearing it during Winter Council, one hand resting on a ledger while she challenged 3 alphas twice her age. She had never needed the ring to command the room. Proceed, Malrek said. Cale placed the band on Seraphine's finger. For 1 heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the moonstone darkened. A sharp crack split the hall. Seraphine screamed as smoke curled from beneath the ring. She tore it free, but not before a black burn circled her finger. Gasps erupted through the galleries. The ring struck the marble and rolled to Cale's boot. Still cracked, still rejecting her. Malrek raised his voice. Alara cursed the relic before fleeing. Cale bent and picked it up. No. The hall quieted. Malrek's expression hardened. Kael studied the stone. Ancient Luna rings were tied to the pack heartstone. They could not be cursed by simple magic. They recognized service, bond, and lawful claim. Seraphine had none of the 3. End the ceremony, Cale ordered. Cassian stepped toward him. Your Majesty, I said, end it. Alpha Command rolled through the hall, shaking dust from the rafters. The nobles lowered their heads. Only Malrek remained still. That evening, Cale entered the royal infirmary alone. Alara's medical records had been removed from the main archive, but the appointment book still held a torn page. Under angled candlelight, he saw the indentation of her name and a date from 3 days earlier. He summoned the healer who had treated her. The old wolf arrived trembling. Was my mate pregnant? No, Your Majesty. The lie came too quickly. Cale's wolf surged forward. The healer dropped to his knees. I asked you a question. She showed signs of exhaustion only. Cale crossed the room slowly. Then why was her appointment erased? The healer's eyes flicked toward the door. Cale followed the movement. Taven stood outside. His oldest friend, his beta, the man who had known every secret passage beneath Blackstone since they were boys. Taven, Cale said. The beta entered, but the scent of fear followed him. You knew she used the archive tunnel. Taven's jaw tightened. I suspected. You said nothing. I thought she might return. Kale studied him, then turned back to the healer. Leave. The healer fled. Tavin remained. Kale opened the cabinet containing the original Heir custodianship decree. He had read it before signing. He had hated every line, but Malrek had promised the document would delay the Eastern Rebellion, while Kale gathered evidence against the council. The parchment inside was not the version he remembered. A new clause had been added beneath the transfer order. The handwriting matched the council scribe. The ink was newer than his signature. Kale read the sentence twice. The maternal vessel will not survive transfer. The room went soundless. He had signed away Alara's freedom. Someone had turned his cowardice into her execution order. Kale lifted his eyes to Tavin. His beta had gone white. You have seen this before, Kale said. Tavin did not answer. Kale's wolf rose behind his eyes. Tell me where my mate is. Tavin looked at the altered decree, then at the king he had served all his life. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. The council knows she went west. The moonstone pendant began to burn against Alara's skin at midnight. She woke with a gasp, one hand gripping the blanket and the other pressed protectively over her abdomen. The northern residence was silent except for the wind scraping against the shutters. The stone beneath her palm pulsed once, then again. Not hot enough to injure her, hot enough to summon her. Alara pushed herself upright. The cramps from the previous evening had faded, but Mara had ordered her to remain in bed for 2 days. Alara had never been good at obeying orders built on incomplete information. She dressed quietly and opened the door. Ronan stood in the corridor. He was fully dressed, Mercy strapped to his side, as if he had expected her. You felt it too, Alara said. No. His amber gaze dropped to the pendant glowing beneath her collar. But the archive doors opened on their own. The Moon Archive lay beneath the oldest section of Ashen Ridge, deeper than the chamber where Ronan had shown her Asteria's portrait. They descended through tunnels cut into black stone, passing iron gates covered in symbols Alara did not recognize. At the final door, Ronan stopped. The surface was carved with 2 wolves facing a crescent moon. There is no lock, he said. My family has guarded this chamber for 4 generations. None of us has ever entered. Alara stepped closer. The pendant pulled toward the stone as though attached by an invisible thread. She lifted it. Nothing happened. Ronan examined the carvings. The portrait showed Asteria holding the moonstone in her right hand. Alara shifted the pendant. The edge of the silver setting caught the thin scar across her palm. A bead of blood rose. It touched the moonstone. Pain flashed through her hand. Alara cried out as silver light raced beneath her skin, tracing lines from the old scar toward her wrist. The mark formed slowly, a double crescent surrounding a single bright point. The ancient door shuddered. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then the stone split down the center and opened inward. Cold air moved out of the chamber carrying the scent of parchment, iron, and old rain. Ronan stared at Alara's glowing palm. The mark of the first Luna. Alara closed her fingers. I am still the same woman I was yesterday. No, he said quietly. Yesterday, the council could pretend you had no claim. Inside the chamber, shelves rose from floor to ceiling. Hundreds of sealed scrolls rested inside stone compartments. At the center stood a circular table marked with the same double crescent, now burning in Alara's palm. She approached it carefully. The pendant illuminated several words carved into the surface. Maternal sovereignty precedes the crown. Ronan removed a leather-bound volume from the nearest shelf. The cover bore the symbol of the Moon Tribunal. Alara opened it. The first pages described the creation of the Alpha Throne. Kings had been given command over armies, territories, and treaties, but not over the bodies of their mates, not over unborn heirs. She read aloud, A moonborn child remains under the first protection of the mother until the age of choice. Ronan leaned over the table. Age of choice? 18. Her eyes moved to the next line. No Alpha King, Council, Blood Claimant, or Pack may remove the heir without the mother's willing oath before the tribunal. Alara's breath caught. The decree Kale had signed was not merely cruel. It was illegal. She turned the page. The following section described the powers of a sovereign Luna descended from Asteria. She could freeze succession. She could deny recognition of an heir. She could summon a moon tribunal without the Alpha King's consent. And if a king signed an order violating maternal law, she could demand his crown be placed under judgment. Ronan watched her expression change. You can take Kale's throne. Alara closed the book. I do not want his throne. What do you want? My child to be born without men calculating what his blood is worth. The chamber seemed to absorb her words. A soft footstep sounded behind them. Mara stood in the doorway, pale and breathless. Ronan's hand went to Mercy. "How did you get past the guards?" "She did not," Mara said. "I ordered them to move." Her eyes were fixed on the mark in Alara's palm. "You look exactly like your mother did when it first appeared." Alara went still. "You knew?" Mara lowered her head. "Yes." The admission landed harder than Alara expected. "You told me you only knew what hunted her. I was trying to keep you alive." "By lying to me?" Mara flinched, but Alara did not soften. "Everyone keeps deciding which truth I am strong enough to survive." The words echoed through the archive. Mara stepped forward slowly. "Your mother was born inside Moon Abbey. She was one of the women the council monitored for ancient blood." Alara's fingers tightened around the book. "They called her Maternal Vessel 6. The air left Alara's lungs. The ledger had listed her as 7. 6 women before her. Her mother had been the last. Mara continued. "Lysandra escaped while pregnant with you. I was a junior healer then. I changed her records, hid her scent, and helped her cross into human territory." "What happened to her?" Mara's eyes filled with grief. "She returned 3 years later because the council had taken another child. She believed she could expose them." Alara already knew the ending. "They killed her." "Yes." The answer was barely a whisper. "They erased her bloodline, changed your birth records, and left you where they believed no one would recognize you." Alara stared at Asteria's law beneath her hands. All her life, she had believed she lacked a family name powerful enough to protect her. The truth was worse. Her name had been buried because it was powerful enough to threaten kings. A horn sounded above the archive. One long note, then 2 shorter ones. Ronan's expression hardened. A message from the Eastern Watch. They returned to the upper keep to find a captured rider kneeling in the war room. Nightfang colors had been cut from his cloak, but the royal wax seal remained on the letter he carried. It was addressed to Ronan. The letter contained only 3 lines in Kale's handwriting. "The decree was altered after I signed it. The council knows Alara is west. They intend to open the Moon Crown vault with the child's blood." Alara read the final line twice. Mara moved closer. The Moon Crown vault was sealed after Asteria's death. "What is inside it?" Ronan asked. Mara's face had gone gray. "Not a crown." She looked at Alara's stomach. "It contains the original Alpha oaths. With Moonborn blood, the council could rewrite them." Ronan's jaw tightened. "They could control every crowned Alpha, and every heir after them," Alara said. The child inside her moved for the first time. It was faint, little more than a flutter beneath her palm, but the moonstone pendant answered with a burst of silver light. Across the room, every flame bent toward Alara. Then the archive bell began ringing beneath the mountain. Ronan looked toward the floor. No one touched it. Alara closed her hand over the glowing bloodline mark. The ancient law had recognized her. And somewhere beyond Ashen Ridge, the Royal Council had just learned that Maternal Vessel 7 was no longer hiding. Seraphine announced her pregnancy before the entire court. She stood beneath the black banners of Nightfang, with one hand resting delicately over her stomach and the other wrapped in white silk where the Luna ring had burned her. High Elder Malrek raised a sealed medical report above his head. "The kingdom has been blessed with a royal heir." Applause erupted through the great hall. Kale did not move. From the throne, he watched Seraphine lower her eyes with practiced modesty. Her pulse was steady. Her scent carried fear, ambition, and the sharp herbal sweetness of fertility tonic. But no pregnancy. Kale knew because he had never touched her. Not once. Seraphine had entered his chambers twice under council orders. Both times, he had dismissed her before the doors fully closed. The court might believe the child was his. His wolf did not. "Come forward, your majesty," Malrek said. "Acknowledge the mother of your heir." Kale descended the steps slowly. Seraphine smiled when he reached her. Only her eyes betrayed the warning beneath it. "Play your part." Kale took the report from Malrek. The royal physician's seal appeared authentic. The blood results named Seraphine as 6 weeks pregnant, with alpha-line markers consistent with House Draven. An impossible result. Kale looked at the physician standing near the pillars. Sweat shone across the man's forehead. Kyle folded the report. "The child will be confirmed, under Moonstone examination." The physician went pale. Malrek's smile thinned. "Such procedures are unnecessary at this stage. For an heir to 9 packs, nothing is unnecessary." Kale handed the report to Taven. His beta accepted it without meeting his eyes. That was when Kale understood. Taven already knew. Far west, Elara stood inside an Ashen Ridge supply yard, studying 12 merchant wagons that had arrived before dawn. The drivers claimed they carried dried meat and medicine from neutral settlements. Every crate bore legal trade stamps. Still, something felt wrong. "The rear wagon is too heavy," Elara said. The quartermaster frowned. It was Wade at the gate, with the horses attached. Ronan stood beside her, his dark coat snapping in the mountain wind. "You think they hid weapons?" "No. Weapons would shift." Elara walked around the wagon, counting the wheel's impressions in the mud. The left side had sunk nearly 2 inches deeper than the right. She opened the trade ledger. Each crate was listed at the same weight. One was not. The third line had been corrected in darker ink. "Remove crate 7. 2 guards dragged it down. The crate smelled of dried herbs, but the nails along its base were new. Ronan used mercy to pry open the false bottom. Inside lay a black crystal wrapped in silver wire. Mara stepped back. A scent recorder. Elara crouched beside it. The device was designed to collect bloodline traces and transmit its location when activated. If it had entered the northern residence, the council would have known exactly where she slept. Beneath the crystal was a second object, a security stone. Ronan placed it on the ground and pressed his burned palm against the surface. Light rose from it. A moving image appeared in the air. Taven stood inside a dark corridor at Blackstone Citadel. Across from him waited a council messenger. Taven removed a small metal object from beneath his coat, the royal seal used by the Beta when Kale was absent. The messenger accepted it. Then Taven said, "The eastern tunnel remains unguarded after midnight." Ilara's chest tightened. That was the tunnel she had used to escape. Ronan's expression turned lethal. "He gave them your route. He may not have known I was already gone. He knew enough." Elara watched the image repeat. Taven looked exhausted, not triumphant. His hands trembled when he surrendered the seal. Fear had driven him, but fear did not erase the consequence. "Send a copy to Kale," she said. Ronan glanced at her. "You still trust him?" "No." Elara rose. "But I trust what guilt will force him to do." At Blackstone, Kale locked the throne room doors with Taven inside. The false pregnancy report lay on the table between them. Beside it, the security crystal projected Taven's betrayal against the wall. Kale watched his oldest friend hand the royal seal to the council messenger again and again. When the image ended, silence filled the room. "My mate," Taven said finally, "was dying." Kale's jaw hardened. "Leora, silver decay. Malrek controlled the only antidote. So you gave him my seal." "At first." Kale stepped closer. "At first?" Taven's face twisted. "He said he would treat her if I provided council schedules, archive access, nothing more. Then she died." "And you continued." Taven looked down. By then he had proof of everything I had done. Kale's fist struck the table hard enough to split the wood. "You gave them Elara's tunnel. I did not know she would use it that night. You knew they were watching her." "Yes." The admission came out broken. Kale wanted to tear out his throat. Instead, he forced himself to ask the question that mattered. "Does the council know she carries my child?" Taven closed his eyes. "Yes." Kale's wolf slammed against his restraint. "They traced the silver shipments to Ashen Ridge. Cassian mobilized before dawn." "How many soldiers?" 4,000. Kale turned toward the doors. Taven caught his arm. "If you march openly, Malrek will declare you compromised and transfer command to Cassian." Kale looked down at the hand gripping him. "You lost the right to advise me." Taven released him. Kale took the false pregnancy report and held it over a candle. The parchment curled, blackened, and burned. Across the mountains, Elara stood on the western watchtower as the first torch appeared along the eastern ridge. Then another. Then hundreds. The line of fire stretched across the horizon like a burning chain. Ronan joined her with mercy drawn. A scout dropped to one knee behind them. "General Cassian carries a council warrant. He demands the surrender of Elara Vane." Elara did not look away from the approaching army. "What does the warrant say?" The scout swallowed. "That the mother must be taken alive." "And the child?" The scout's silence answered her. Below, Ashen Ridge's warning bells began to ring. Elara placed one hand over her abdomen. For months, she had survived by disappearing. Now 4,000 soldiers had come to drag her back into the cage she escaped. She turned to Ronan. "Evacuate the children. Seal the northern road. Leave the eastern pass open." Ronan's eyes narrowed. That gives Cassian a direct path to the settlement. No, Elara said, watching the torchlight descend toward the valley. It gives him the path I want him to take. General Cassian chose the eastern pass because Elara wanted him to. From the watchtower, she watched 4,000 soldiers descend between the black cliffs in disciplined lines. Their armor reflected the dawn, turning the narrow valley into a river of silver. Ronan stood beside her, mercy resting against his scarred left palm. "You are certain?" he asked. "No," Elara replied, "but I am prepared." Below them, Ashen Ridge appeared vulnerable. The northern road had been sealed. The central settlement had been emptied. Storehouse doors stood open, revealing barrels and sacks abandoned in haste. It looked like panic. Cassian believed it. His army entered the eastern pass before sunrise. The first 1,000 soldiers reached the empty grain warehouses without resistance. They broke the locks and found enough supplies to feed an army for a month. Cassian raised one hand. "Secure the stores." His officers moved quickly. That was the moment Elara gave the signal. A line of mirrors flashed from the ridge. Workers hidden above the valley released the old mining gates. Water thundered through abandoned channels, carrying powdered limestone into the lower pass. The ground beneath Cassian's soldiers turned white and slick. Then the warehouse floors collapsed, not into pits deep enough to kill, into old storage chambers designed to trap invaders without spilling unnecessary blood. Men shouted as ranks broke apart. Horses reared. Wagons overturned and blocked the road behind them. Cassian drew his sword. "Push forward." The second mirror flashed. Ashen Ridge archers appeared along both cliffs, but they did not aim at soldiers. They fired into the supply wagons. Ropes snapped. Wheels shattered. The army's food, weapons, and medical packs spilled across the mud. Ronan watched the chaos below. "You could have buried the entire pass." "I need witnesses," Elara said. "Not graves." The third signal came from the southern ridge. Exile wolves emerged behind Cassian's forces, cutting off retreat. Human traders blocked the western road with iron carts. 5 smaller pack banners rose beside Ashen Ridge's black standard. Cassian's army was surrounded. Elara descended from the watchtower before Ronan could stop her. "You are staying behind the shield line," he said. "I know. You are also carrying a child who has already survived silver poisoning, bond sickness, and an army's attention." Elara glanced at him. "Then he has inherited excellent timing." Despite himself, Ronan almost smiled. They walked to the center of the pass beneath a white flag. Cassian came forward with 50 guards. His face was gray with fury. "Elara Vane," he called. "By authority of the Royal Council, you are under arrest for treason, theft of royal documents, and unlawful removal of the Alpha King's heir." Elara stopped 20 feet away. "The child is not royal property." Cassian's gaze dropped to the curve now visible beneath her coat. "The council will decide that." "No," Elara said. "The law will." She lifted the warrant his scout had delivered the night before. The paper bore the council seal and Kale's royal mark. Then she pressed her glowing palm against the bottom of the document. Silver light spread across the parchment. A new symbol appeared over both seals, the double crescent of the first Luna. Several older wolves in Cassian's ranks dropped to one knee. Cassian stared at the mark. "That bloodline is extinct." Elara raised her hand so every soldier could see it. "Then your council has been lying to you." Ronan stepped forward and read the terms of surrender. Cassian's soldiers would be disarmed, treated for injuries, and permitted to return east after giving testimony about the illegal warrant. Any officer who continued the attack would be charged under ancient law. Cassian looked at the wolves kneeling behind him. "You would betray your commander for a false Luna?" One of his captains removed his helmet. "I will not help men cut a child from its mother." Others lowered their weapons. The sound spread through the valley, sword after sword striking the ground. Cassian was taken alive. 3 days later, representatives from 5 small packs gathered inside the Ashen Ridge Hall. They had all suffered under council law. One had lost an heir to Moon Abbey. Another had been denied winter medicine after refusing a political marriage. Human merchants had watched their contracts seized by crowned alphas who believed no mortal court could challenge them. Elara placed a new document on the central table. It was not a blood oath. It was a charter. "No pack kneels to another," she told them. "No child belongs to a throne. No Luna loses her voice through marriage. No alpha may use command inside a civil council." One by one, they signed. Ronan signed last. "What will this alliance be called?" Mara asked. Elara looked at the moonstone pendant resting against her chest. Moonhaven. No crown was placed on her head. No Alpha claimed her. The people in that hall named her Sovereign Luna because she had already led them. That evening, Elara issued the first order of the Moonhaven Alliance, a summons to Moon Tribunal. She sealed it with her bloodline mark and addressed it to Blackstone Citadel. Then she prepared to return. The journey east took 4 days. When Moonhaven's delegation reached the gates of Nightfang, hundreds of pack members lined the road. Some watched with suspicion. Others lowered their heads as Elara passed. Kale waited alone beneath the iron arch. He wore no crown. The exhaustion in his face made him look older than 35, but his power still pressed against the air like an approaching storm. Then he saw her stomach. Every trace of command left him. The dormant mate bond surged awake. Kale staggered as the child's heartbeat reached him through the tether. His heir, his son, alive. Elara, he breathed. He stepped forward. Ronan's hand moved toward Mercy, but Elara stopped him with a glance. Kale lifted one trembling hand. May I? No. Elara's answer was quiet. He froze before touching her. Pain moved across his face, but he lowered his hand. She walked past him. I did not return for you, Kale. He turned toward her. I know. I returned for judgment. The great hall doors opened. Elara entered beside Ronan, Mara, and the witnesses of Moonhaven. Seraphine stood near the throne with Malrek and General Cassian's empty chair beside her. The black throne waited at the end of the hall. Elara took one step across the threshold. A crack split the chamber. The throne fractured from its base to its crown. Then the pack heartstone beneath the marble floor ignited with silver light, glowing directly under Elara's feet. The silver light beneath Elara's feet spread across the great hall like water. Every wolf in the chamber felt it. The pack heartstone had not answered a Luna in 3 generations. Yet now it pulsed under the marble, matching the rhythm of the unborn child inside Elara's body. High Elder Malrek stepped back, only once, but Elara saw it. Fear. Seal the doors, he ordered. No guard moved. Moon Tribunal law had already taken hold. Above the throne, the ancient bell rang by itself. One deep note rolled through Blackstone Citadel, silencing every whisper. Ronan stood at Elara's right side. Mara held a leather case of medical records at her left. Behind them waited the 5 allied alphas, human witnesses, displaced mothers, and soldiers who had surrendered at Ashen Ridge. Kale stood below the fractured throne. He wore no crown. Malrek lifted his staff. This woman enters the royal hall with an enemy alpha and armed exiles. She has no authority to summon judgment. Elara removed the copied decree from her coat. I summon it under ancient maternal law. There is no such law. Ronan placed the recovered archive volume on the evidence table. There is now. A murmur moved through the chamber. Elara began with the Heir custodianship decree. She laid the original beside the copy she had taken before escaping. The 2 documents were identical until the final clause. On the original, now held by the council, one line had been added beneath Kale's signature. The maternal vessel will not survive transfer. Mara opened the medical file. Elara Vane was 8 weeks pregnant when she fled, she said. Her blood contained repeated doses of refined silver dust intended to weaken the pregnancy. She placed a glass vial beside the parchment. The same substance was found in the Ashen Ridge water supply and traced to Vale military supply. General Cassian was dragged forward in chains. His expression remained proud. I supplied no poison. Elara opened the pack ledger recovered from the mine, then explained this. She turned the page toward the tribunal. 6 names had been crossed out. The 7th remained. Elara Vane Maternal Vessel 7. Women in the gallery began to cry. Not loudly. They cried like people recognizing a crime they had been forced to accept as tradition. Malrek struck his staff against the floor. Forged records. Ronan placed the security crystal on the table. The image of Taven appeared in the air, surrendering the royal seal and revealing the archive tunnel. Taven stood among the royal guards, his face hollow. Kale looked at him. Speak. Taven stepped forward. Malrek's eyes narrowed. You are bound by royal oath. Not in this hall, Elara said. The heartstone flashed. Taven placed his palm over it. Blood oath light circled his wrist. I gave the council the beta seal, he said. I gave them patrol schedules. I told them about the eastern tunnel. His voice broke. They promised medicine for my mate. After she died, I continued because I feared execution. Malrek's calm finally fractured. He is a confessed traitor. His word means nothing. Then let the Luna ring speak, Elara said. Seraphine went pale. The cracked ring rested inside a glass case beside the throne. Malrek had ordered it hidden after the failed coronation. Elara held out her hand. The case shattered. The ring lifted into the air. It flew past Kale, past Malrek, and tore itself from the silver chain where Seraphine had concealed it. The moonstone stopped above Elara's palm. The crack sealed. Gasps filled the hall. Elara did not put it on. I do not need a ring to prove what I served. Seraphine sank to her knees. I was never pregnant. Cassian closed his eyes. Malrek turned on her. Be silent. No. Seraphine's voice trembled, but she continued. The physician used stored alpha blood to alter the test. My father arranged it. Elder Malrek promised I would become regent after the child was taken. Kyle stared at her. And you agreed? Seraphine began to cry. At first, I believed Elara would only be confined. Then, I saw the death clause. Elara's gaze hardened. You still continued. Yes. The single word destroyed whatever sympathy remained in the room. Malrek raised both hands. Even if these accusations are true, the decree bears the king's signature. Kale Draven authorized the transfer. The crown cannot be judged for exercising sovereign power. All eyes turned to Kale. He looked at the parchment he had signed. For weeks, he had wanted to explain that he had been buying time, that Malrek had threatened civil war, that he had intended to protect Elara before the transfer ever happened. None of it changed the truth. He had made the decision without her. Kale walked to the Heartstone. I signed it. The admission struck the hall into silence. Elara did not know. I believed secrecy would protect her. I believed I could control the council, after giving them legal authority over her body and our child. His voice lowered. I was wrong. Malrek hissed. Think carefully, Your Majesty. Kale looked toward Elara. She stood with one hand over their child, watching him without hope. Only judgment. I chose control over trust, Kale said. I chose the throne over her right to decide. The added death clause is Malrek's crime. The signature beneath it is mine. He removed the royal seal from his neck. Then he turned toward the black throne. Kale raised the seal and drove it into the fracture. The ancient stone exploded. Black fragments crashed across the dais. I surrender royal immunity, he declared. Let the tribunal judge me as it would any alpha. Malrek roared. His hand vanished beneath his robe. Taven saw the flash of silver first. Malrek threw the dagger directly at Elara. Taven moved between them. The blade entered beneath his ribs. He fell at Elara's feet. Royal guards seized Malrek before he could strike again. Taven looked up at Elara, blood spreading across his uniform. I am sorry. Elara knelt carefully beside him. Your truth came late. I know. His eyes found Kyle. Do better than I did. Then his body went still. The Heartstone flared. Malrek screamed as the blood oath mark burned across his throat, exposing every lie he had spoken in the hall. The tribunal had chosen. But before Elara could hear the sentence, pain tore through her abdomen. Her breath vanished. Warm liquid ran down her legs. Mara caught her arm. Elara? Another contraction struck. Too early. Far too strong. The silver light in the Heartstone flickered once. Then every flame in the great hall went black. Darkness swallowed the great hall. Elara heard Mara shouting before she felt hands steadying her shoulders. Do not move her too quickly. Another contraction tore through her body. Elara gripped Mara's sleeve, fighting for breath as pain tightened across her abdomen. The child is too early, Mara said. Kale was already beside them. His face had gone white. What does she need? Space, Mara snapped. And for every alpha in this room to stop flooding the air with panic. Kale forced his wolf down. The pressure in the hall eased immediately. Ronan lifted Elara carefully, but paused when she stiffened. Moon chamber, she whispered. The old birthing room beneath the Heartstone. Malrek had hidden records there for decades, but the ancient chamber had once belonged to the first Luna. Mara nodded. Take her. Kale stepped forward. Elara looked at him through the pain. Not yet. The words wounded him, but he stopped. Ronan carried her through the passage beneath the shattered throne, while Mara followed with the medical case. Behind them, Moonhaven guards sealed the corridor. No council member was permitted inside. No one would take her child. The moon chamber was circular, built of pale stone that glowed faintly when Elara entered. At its center stood a low bed beneath carvings of mothers, holding newborn wolves beneath a crescent moon. The moment Ronan placed her down, another contraction struck. Mara examined her quickly. The silver poisoning weakened the protective membrane. Quote, labor has started, but the child is still fighting. Quote, Alara's hand flew to her stomach. Can you stop it? I can slow it. I cannot promise more. Mara mixed moonroot, willow bark, and a single drop of Alara's blood in a stone cup. Outside the chamber, Kale heard every cry. The mate bond carried Alara's pain into him in broken waves. He stood with one hand against the sealed door, unable to enter, unable to command, unable to fix what his silence had helped create. For the first time in his life, power offered him nothing. Ronan stood across the corridor. If she asks for you, you enter, he said. Until then you remain where she placed you. Kale looked at him. You love her. Ronan did not deny it. But that does not make her mine. The answer struck deeper than hostility would have. Inside, hours passed. Alara's strength began to fail near dawn. Mara pressed a cold cloth against her forehead. Listen to me. The child's heartbeat is slowing. Fear opened inside Alara. Not fear of death. Fear of waking to empty arms. No counsel, she whispered. No crown. He stays with me. He will. Promise me. I promise. The moonstone pendant flared against Alara's chest. Silver light spread down her arms and gathered over her stomach. The bloodline mark in her palm opened like a living crescent. Alara screamed once. Then the chamber filled with the cry of a newborn child. Mara caught him in both hands. For one terrible second, he was still. Then he inhaled. A strong, furious cry broke through the room. Alara collapsed against the pillows as Mara placed the small boy on her chest. His dark hair was damp. His tiny fingers opened and closed against her skin. A faint silver crescent glowed over his heart before fading. Kaelin, Alara whispered. The heartstone above them reignited. Light spread through Blackstone Citadel, reaching the Great Hall, the courtyard, and every pact bond connected to Nightfang. But the child did not answer the throne. He answered his mother. Kale felt it from the corridor. His knees gave way. When Mara opened the door, she found the Alpha King kneeling on the stone floor. Alara will see you, she said. Alone. Kale entered without his crown, his seal, or his command. Alara held Kaelin against her chest. She looked exhausted, pale, and more powerful than she had ever appeared beside the throne. Kale stopped several feet away. May I come closer? Alara watched him for a long moment. One step. He obeyed. Kaelin stirred at the sound of his father's breathing. Kale's eyes filled, but he did not reach out. I have no right to ask for either of you. No, Alara said. You do not. He accepted the judgment without defense. But I am asking for the chance to become a man our son will not be ashamed to know. Alara looked down at the child. That chance will come with conditions. I will accept them. You will live under the Moonhaven Charter. You will hold no authority over Kaelin's title, education, residence, or future bond. You will visit only when invited. You will never use Alpha Command on him or on me. Kale nodded. And the mate bond? He asked. It remains closed. Pain crossed his face. Alara did not look away. If there is ever a future between us, it will not begin with a crown, guilt, or fate. It will begin with trust. You have none of mine left. I understand. Outside the chamber, the tribunal delivered its final sentences. Malrek was stripped of rank and imprisoned inside the moon vault where he had hidden the stolen records. General Cassian lost command of the Eastern armies and was convicted of treason. Seraphine surrendered her title and agreed to testify against every healer, scribe, and council member involved in the maternal program. Her punishment was service at the sanctuary for displaced mothers, where no one bowed to her name. Taven's betrayal was entered into the official record. So was his final act. The Royal Council was dissolved. In its place rose a new governing body, with seats for alphas, lunas, betas, healers, exiles, and human allies. 2 weeks later, Alara left Blackstone Citadel. She did not wear the Luna ring. It rested beside Kaelin's cradle, inside a small wooden box. Ronan rode with the Moonhaven delegation, but he made no claim on her future. At the western border, he asked only one question. Are you certain? Alara looked toward the mountains. For the first time, yes. Months passed. Kale surrendered control of Nightfang to an elected regency and moved into a modest house near Moonhaven's outer territory. He came without guards. He repaired fences, carried winter supplies, and listened when others spoke. He did not ask Alara to forgive him. One evening, He arrived at the Moonhaven gate carrying a hand-carved wooden cradle. Ilara stood on the other side with Kaelin sleeping against her shoulder. Kael waited. No command, no expectation, only patience. Ilara looked at the man he had been, the man he was trying to become, and the child who would never belong to a throne. Then she opened the gate. Not fully, only enough for him to step through. That night, after Kael left, the frozen mate bond stirred for the first time. Ilara felt it. She did not call him back. She placed Kaelin in the cradle, touched the Luna ring inside its box, and closed the lid. This time, she whispered, he will earn the door I choose to open. So, Ilara's story has finally reached its quiet place. Are you still here with me? Because if you are, then you probably understand that the deepest wound in this story was never only betrayal. It was being misunderstood by the person who should have known her best. It was being reduced to a role, a title, a useful piece on someone else's board. Ilara was hurt, but she did not beg. She did not stay where her dignity had become negotiable. She walked away while her heart was still breaking. And that may be one of the hardest things a person can do. Life does not always let us control what others choose, what they believe, or how badly they misjudge us. But we still control the next step. We control whether we chase people who have already made us feel small, or whether we turn around and choose ourselves again. And no, choosing yourself does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like closing a door, drinking some water, and refusing to send that one very bad message at midnight. If Ilara's courage stayed with you, comment one word: dignity. And if this story meant something to you, leave a like, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories like this.